Welcome, everyone, to Book Chat with Kate and Theresa.
I'm Kate.
And I'm Theresa.
Oh, and this week we are covering the book Year of Wonders by Geraldine Brooks.
Yes, it's a novel plague. This is the last book in our Plague and Pandemics series.
Yes, it's the last one in our season, so we're going out with an intense one.
It is. Yeah, it would have almost been better to do this one first, and then we could have
Yes, exactly,
had
and then
ones.
had some letdown, because this one, guys, it's intense.
It is pretty intense, yes.
Before we get to the book, a little bit of business. Since this is our last episode in our Plagues and Pandemic season, we wanted to announce our next season, which is what, Teresa?
Retellings of fairy tales.
Yes.
Which will be a nice, hopefully lighter read. I don't know. Fairy tales and folklore can be pretty intense.
We'll see. We're doing some YA. We're doing quite a few YA, so that should be a little less intense than this book, at least.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, but I'm really looking forward to it. And in fact, we've already discussed it. We could probably do this for a few seasons.
We could. We have a big list of books, but we will put the books that we're going to be reading on our social media. So make sure you check out either YouTube in our posted, our page that we can post text to, or Instagram or TikTok.
Yep. And in the comments of the videos in the podcast, I always put list.
Yes.
And we'll also have a guest for this season as well. We're trying to have a guest every single season.
Yes.
So.
And we're starting with our family because they are willing victims.
Yes. And hopefully they're also our fans. So they're,
We hope.
We hope. We hope. All right. So we will jump into talking about the book.
Yes.
First of all, this is not a family-friendly book. So
it is not.
Do not listen to it if you have children in the room with you, because
you can listen to our podcast.
Yes.
Because we are family-friendly and we won't go into detail about any of the parts that aren't family-friendly.
Yes,
but
point.
It's definitely not an audiobook listen for the book itself.
Yeah. Yeah, you could, earbuds, or if you're by yourself, that's one thing. I did listen to it. I will say that the narrator's pretty monotone. I didn't listen to the whole thing, but I did listen to snippets of it because I wanted to see what it was like, and it is kind of monotone, which actually, now that I say that, probably helps with the intensity of the book. Not having a super animated
dramatized version. Yes.
Yeah. But yes, as Kate said, we are family friendly, so we don't swear, we don't go into details about anything. There are some sensitive topics, so we will talk about some stuff, but
we're not going to go into detail or anything like that.
Yeah, but I would definitely say look up the trigger warnings for this book before you read it. So we will be talking about spoilers though in this. So if you want it spoiled, then click away and read it and come back. Please, we want that.
Yes.
So if you don't care about it being spoiled, then hang around and you can listen about a fictionalized version of the bubonic plague based on real events. All right. So Kate's going to start us off with a summary.
Yes, this is just a very brief summary because this book has a lot going on in it for as short as it is. So I just am covering the main points here. So in 1665, Anna Firth is living in a small village as a widower with 2 children. She has a boarder who is a tailor. The man receives a bolt of cloth and promptly falls ill and dies. This marks the beginning of the plague year, a year when 2/3 of the town sicken and die. The book follows the village and villagers through Anna's eyes as they both helped and failed each other during that year. And as we mentioned, the plague that they refer to, they always refer to it as just the plague in the book.
Yeah.
It's the bubonic plague.
Yeah, which, if you know anything about the bubonic plague, is just really, really unpleasant.
Horrid. It's
awful.
Horrible.
And in the book, they don't know that fleas are the cause. Fleas and pests are the cause and spread of the plague. And they're definitely spending a lot of time blaming each other.
They are trying to figure out who's to blame and if God is punishing this as a punishment or as a test. And so because they just don't have the science that we do, knowing where it comes from, it's harder to get rid of it. It's harder to fight it. And it's harder to make sense of why this is happening.
But they do some things that I think we would see as sort of modern reactions to a pandemic. So
definitely.
We'll definitely talk about that. But we'll start with the first question. Kate, did you enjoy the book?
So I really struggled with this book. It's a very intense book that delves into a lot of very hard topics. So it could be disturbing. The grief that Anna feels was very, very deep. The author portrayed it so that you're in it with her.
Mm-hmm.
You're experiencing her as she goes through the year of the plague, helping victims, and then dealing with the grief of losing her children and most of her town and her friends, and seeing her friends turn into people she doesn't recognize by their actions. So I think it's a valuable book about how hope can come from dark places, but I did not enjoy the book. What about you, Teresa?
I did not enjoy it. The story itself of Anna and the way that she goes through the plague didn't hold much interest for me because, and this has always been my struggle since we started this, is that I don't care about the inner monologue of people as much as other people do. Like, I don't really care. This is definitely a character-driven story.
It is.
And I don't care for that. And I felt like some of it was just, some of the parts were so unnecessary. So she is going through the worst things. And the author is like, you know what, we should just pile on and make it so that literally every aspect of her life is as horrible as I could possibly make it. She has her husband is dead. Then you have to read the chapter where her children die. And I sobbed through that chapter. I didn't like that at all. And then she makes a friend that she's starting to kind of fall for, and then he dies.
Yes.
And then she has her abusive father and her horrible stepmother. And it's just like horrible thing after horrible thing. The only good thing in her life seems to be the pastor's wife, the preacher's wife, Eleanor.
Yes.
And why couldn't the book have a little bit more lightness to it? Because for the most part, the world isn't that black. I mean, maybe I'm wrong about that. But anyways, yeah, so I did not like it. And I did struggle with the way it was written. I did not like the voice. It was strange.
It was a very interesting way it was written. Actually, let's just skip ahead to that question since we're going to merge into that. What was the overall style of the writing, Teresa? Since you mentioned already the voice was somewhat different.
So it was like the author was trying to make it sound sort of early modern English. So 1600s, 17th century, that's early modern English. That's a little time after Shakespeare. But it was also not, it was a little too modern in the way that the sentences are being formed. She takes old-fashioned words and sprinkles them in replacement of more common words for us. And then there are other times where she like just totally does away with trying to make it sound historical, and she just makes it modern, and it keeps going back and forth. Now she does eventually kind of move over into sounding more historical for like halfway through the book, and it like stays pretty consistent. But at the beginning, I was like, this is the weirdest writing style.
Yes, there was some continuity errors that I think maybe a different editor would have done something different there. It would have been helpful if she stayed in one voice throughout the entire thing.
It is first person. I was not expecting, it didn't really bother me, but I just wasn't expecting it. So
yes, it's first person. Anna is the character who was in her head. And I think that actually made it more graphic and more detailed because you're experiencing her emotions and her feelings and everything through her eyes. So you couldn't get any separation there from the horrible events that were happening. So I think that just made it even more intense.
Yeah. We're going to pause real quick and just inform you that we might accidentally switch between saying Anna and Anna because we couldn't decide if it was Anna or Anna. I have a sister-in-law named Anna, but I also have a cousin named Anna. So, or
yes,
you know?
So it's spelled A-N-N-A. So and she never does a pronunciation. So
right. Just as a little disclaimer, we don't want any mean comments about it. It's going to be Anna or Anna.
Confusion that we're talking about two different people.
Yes, exactly. So anyways, back to it. We've already discussed that it was historical fiction. Did you have anything else to add to that, Kate?
I'd say it's also perhaps feminist literature. I think I saw it classified there. It falls in the feminist kind of subcategory. We could discuss whether or not we think it represents feminism in a good way or in a correct way, but I do think that it is considered feminist literature.
Okay. Yeah. I just put down that it was historical fiction. So
yes, very much historical fiction. I would say that's its primary genre.
Yeah. All right, Kate, what was the setting of the book?
So the book was set in, it never says what the village is in the main portion of the book. However, there is a historical section at the end, and you learn it's based on a village in England.
Yes.
Spelled E-I-A.
So it looks like it should be pronounced, but it's right.
Yeah. And so we learn after the fact in the author's note and some historical background that it is based on a real village. So it's a small village of about maybe 350 people. and it's the year 1665. So, and it's a difficult place to live. A lot of the men are miners, and if they're not miners, they're trying to get by on the land. There are basically two main aristocratic families in town. Well, one aristocratic family, and then one family that has a little bit more money, and that's the minister or the rector and his wife. That's Mr.
Montpellier.
Montpellier, thank you, and his wife Eleanor, and then the Bradfords?
Bradfords.
Yes, who are the wealthy family in town. So it's a difficult place to live, and it seems very foggy. She mentions the fog on multiple occasions, and it's just a very, very small village.
Yeah, I wonder where Eam is in England. It is pretty far north, so it makes sense that it's a bit colder as you get further
Yes.
north and everything like that. So yeah, that's interesting. That's what I have for the setting. And you don't really know much else outside. And in fact, early on in the book, Anna makes this point that she has never traveled as far as like her tenant has, where he has been in London and stuff like that. And she hasn't traveled even 14 miles to another village that's nearby.
Right.
Because she has no reason to. So, and that actually is pretty significant at the very end of the book.
It is very significant, which we'll talk about that in a little bit, I think.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Were there any surprising twists to the book since you knew the outcome from the very beginning?
Yeah, so that was interesting because we start with Anna after the plague has basically ravished their village. So we know that Eleanor, the rector's wife, is going to die. And we know that so many people are going to die. So I think the author did a fairly good job of building up suspense and throughout the book, because it not only was just about the plague and who would die, there was also the reactions of the villagers. At one point, there is a mob of villagers that accuse two women of being witches, and they throw one into a very deep pool, a well, sort of, and to see if she'll swim or sink. And obviously she sinks.
She sinks.
And then they hang the other. And that mob scene was very brutal. It was hard to get through.
Yeah.
So that was not something I was expecting. There was foreshadowing enough that I guess I did begin to suspect it.
Right.
But that was a twist. Another twist was probably the most significant twist was at the end. You see Eleanor live through a sickness that they thought was the plague, but she ends up dying anyways from a stabbing from a mad woman who happens to be Anna's stepmother.
Right. Speaking of witches,
yes.
I mean, she's sort of practicing witchcraft.
She's actually, that was an interesting parallel, because she actually is practicing witchcraft.
Right.
Which the two women they accused of practicing witchcraft were not doing so. They simply were healers and knowers of herb lore and how to use plants, and were providing the only relief in the village for symptoms, and the only ones who knew how to birth babies.
Right. So they're basically the doctors in town. Like they have all this medicine knowledge. I mean, medicine as far as that village is concerned. And they kill them. Both of them.
Yes, they kill them very early on in the play.
Which is just awful. So then you have two other characters scrambling to figure out what these herbs are and what they do and how best to administer them. And I can't even imagine.
Eleanor and Anna kind of take over their role and help the villagers get through the rest of the plague as best they can. Because basically, once you caught the plague, you were doomed. There was two people who did manage to survive in her village.
Right.
After having the plague. But once you caught it, it was a death sentence.
I was also surprised at some of the deaths. Some of the deaths were clearly not plague related. I think that is so senseless. Like in a town that's being ravaged by the plague and people are dying left and right, why are people then going around killing more, So, but it also goes back to what we read about in Get Well Soon, where people just turn on each other.
They do.
Point fingers. But the other thing that I thought was the turn of character for Mr. Montpellier, and we're going to stop calling him that. We're just going to call him Michael. That's his first name. It's easier to pronounce. He is such a good character throughout the entire book, and it's like the last chapter where he's the worst.
He leads the town in closing its borders and not letting anyone in or out of the town to prevent the spread of plague to other towns. Yes. He leads that. He keeps the villagers' spirits uplifted. He implements like social distancing. He's burying the dead himself. He's digging graves. He's visiting the sick at great risk to himself. He was a very, very cool character. And then
then the author just ruins his character. And I saw no reason for that. There was literally no reason to have his character be such a horrible human being at the very end. Like, if there had been some signs building up to it, that would have been one thing, but there weren't. There was like maybe one instance when Eleanor is sick and he doesn't want Anna hearing what Eleanor is saying while she's feverish. That was like a little bit of a foreshadowing, a little bit of a hint that something was going on in their marriage. But yeah, he's just ended up not being a good person. And I was like, literally no reason for this.
And we're not going to go into a lot of detail about what makes him a bad person, because it would switch this from family friendly.
Yeah, exactly.
But basically, he was punishing his wife in a way.
That leads me to my other thing about this book and how Anna just cannot catch a break is like almost every single man she comes into contact is the worst.
Yes.
And even if it's like hidden under the surface like it was for Michael, and then suddenly she gets to know a little bit about him and she's like, oh, you're also horrible. And it's like, what? And then at the end, she is married in name only, basically, to a guy with 4 other wives. It's like, girl.
Because at the end of the book, she ends up traveling to an Arab country. Where she is taken as a wife by a man there in order to be able to practice medicine and learn from him. In order to stay in his house, she had to become his wife. In name only. He doesn't sound particularly like a bad person.
No.
But in the 1660s, I guess you couldn't exist very well as your own, as a woman.
Yeah, living on your own, making your own living.
The 2 women who were killed as witches were managing, although maybe they weren't, because they were killed as witches.
They were killed as witches. I mean, if they were married and still practicing or, studying herbs, they probably would have still been killed as witches, because it was the 1600s.
Yes, exactly. So I would have much preferred an ending where Anna was either on her own or found love or some sort of thing in her way. I did not need her to have a husband at the end.
Right.
Is where I differ a little bit with this being a feminist novel, because Anna ended up with a man. She had to have a man. And I get that because it's the 1660s. But I feel like she was at a point in her life where she could have worked in the village as a healer, midwife, and lived on her own and been quite content, perhaps. But then we had to take this other route where she completely leaves the village and ends up as one of 4 wives.
Yeah, and as we mentioned, the 2 women that were working as healers are dead, and then Eleanor dies, and the only person who knows anything is Anna, and then she leaves. Like, okay.
Yes, she flees the village to protect a baby.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
But it was jarring to know that after the year she spent in the village ministering to those people, she fled.
She just leaves. Yeah, I didn't like that. But all right.
Who are the main / significant characters, Teresa?
So we've already mentioned them. We have Anna Frith. Is that how you say her name?
Firth or Fifth?
Frith. Oh man, maybe I spelled it wrong. We have Anna. And then we have Eleanor Montpellion, who is married to the preacher Michael Montpellion. And I think those are probably our 3 most significant characters in the book. I will say that really early on, you have George Vickers, and he's the one who brings the plague to their town. He has an infected piece of linen or cloth, bolt of cloth or something like that.
Yes, that probably had fleas on it.
Yes, so then he contracts the illness, and then from there it spreads throughout the rest of the town. And so he's pretty significant just because he's the start of it. And then of course you have, man, what was her name? I didn't write her name down. The Gowdy, the aunt and the niece that did.
I didn't know how to pronounce it. It was like Anys and then Mem.
And then Mem, that's right. Yes. And I thought they were pretty significant because without what they're doing in the village, then there is no herbs and stuff for Eleanor and Anna to treat people. So
and their death kind of spurs Anna and Eleanor on to self-study and become these healers and mentors.
Right, which then leads to Anna doing midwife work, and that later becomes her interest in why she moves away to study that.
Well, she flees and then
Well,
she happens to study it.
right,
Yes.
right.
Yes.
But
It becomes her life's passion.
but if it hadn't been for them and then their
Mm-hmm.
deaths, that wouldn't have
Yes.
happened because she wouldn't have been the one running around helping deliver babies.
Right. Yeah.
So
I have also that just the townsfolk as a whole represented a character. They kind of represented the best and worst of humanity, a lot of times the worst,
true.
because there were so many situations with the townspeople. They kind of all bled together for me. But like
Same.
one of them was where actually Anna's father buries a man alive who is sick with the plague but recovers.
Right.
And so we have that horrible instance. We have another instance where a little girl of like 10 or 12, her entire family dies, and the miners are going to take her mine from her, or only source of income that Anna and Eleanor then go and mine and save her. So there's a lot of instances where I think the townspeople just sort of serve as foils for whatever Anna is going through.
Yeah. And that's a good way to put that because there are so many characters.
Yes,
And
so many.
And so many times, some of their names are so similar. And I was like, I cannot keep these people separated in my mind.
Yes, and I wonder if we're even meant to, or
I
it's
don't
just
think
supposed to
so.
be a blur because so many of them are gone by the end.
Right. Because so often she's talking about, like, okay, we're at church and there's fewer people here. We're at church, there's fewer people. And then they end up doing their version of social distancing.
Yes.
And they're having church outside. And every single time she's like, there's fewer people. There's fewer people. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Were the characters relatable and or likable?
So the townspeople were very unlikable overall. I don't think Anna really, I think in her own way, Anna liked them and loved them, but she also disdained them for some of their actions. As for Anna herself, whose point of view we're experienced, I didn't like her necessarily. I didn't hate her, but I struggled to like her. I think it's because the author had her so honest in her thoughts and feelings, and a lot of them were not pleasant. They did not paint her in a good light.
Right.
So it was a struggle at times to like her, and because we had so much tragedy coming at us all the time, it was a struggle to empathize with her, I felt, because it was just too much.
It was a lot. There was barely a moment to breathe.
Yes. I did like Eleanor, the minister's wife, and Michael, the minister at first, until the very end, where we had this sudden reversal and he's this terrible person.
Right.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, Anna was a very interesting character. She was flawed and she could be difficult to like. What about you?
Yeah. So I didn't really like Anna. I didn't relate to her. I thought she was pretty spineless a lot of the time. And I struggled to understand her spinelessness. Like, okay, if we're looking at this through a historical lens, as a woman standing up to these people, she's not doing a good job of that because she can't. But she sees other women standing up to men, and she wants to do that. She just can't bring herself to do it. And so a lot of the time she just remains silent, which really bothered me because I am not that person.
Yes.
So that's probably why I didn't relate to her. I did like, until the end, I did like Eleanor and Michael. Now, I liked them because they are struggling so hard to the detriment of themselves to help the people of the town.
Yes.
And I really liked that. And I kind of see myself as a good caregiver. So if I was in their shoes, I would hope that's how I would be as well. So I related to them in that way. And I love all things like when it comes to like herbs and stuff. So I loved the scenes when they were in the Gowdy's house working on their like tinctures and stuff. So
yes. And Eleanor was incredibly intellectual. She loved to learn and study and things like that. And I can see you relating to that.
That's true. Yes, because as we learn, Eleanor comes from this high class family. And so she had all of this learning at her disposal. And she talks about, like, if I wanted to learn this, I could. And if I wanted to learn that, I could. And so, and she seemed to like to learn. So,
yes. And I will say she passes that on to Anna, I think.
She does. I agree. She sees that in Anna as well.
Yes, Anna is spineless. And in fact, at one point, Eleanor even kind of calls her out on that she's been spineless. She thinks she's dying. She has a cold, a very severe cold, pneumonia or something.
Right.
And she said, you were something along the lines of, when I met you, you were timid and meek.
Oh, yes, I remember that now.
It's been like we've put you under glass and you've grown. So I will say Anna evolved and became much less timid and meek until like the ultimate time at the end of the book where she takes charge of a situation and rescues a baby that they were going to drown and negotiates for the baby's safety, books passage across seas where she's never even been to London, and she manages to end up in the Arab world. And so I feel like the plague year kind of refined her and reformed her.
Yes. And
into a less spineless person. But for the majority of the book, she was pretty spineless.
Yeah, but I will say, to the author's credit, she doesn't have Anna be like totally spineless and then boom, she's on it.
Yes.
Like there's this slow progression. So like when they go mine that one mine for that little girl, and then when her father dies and her stepmother is going crazy and she's really worried about her stepsister or her half sister, and so she keeps wanting to check on her, and that ends in tragedy, but like you can see that growth where she's like,
yes,
I need to do something, I'm going to be more proactive, and you can see how it leads to where it gets to at the end of the book.
One of the neatest scenes for me was where she in a way stole the minister's horse.
Yes.
And she took him out for a ride bareback, and that was greater and braver and just completely outside of her station than anything we'd seen her do until that point.
Book. Yep. Yeah. But yeah, overall, a weird character that I was not enjoying being inside of her head. And she was so weird about some characters. She has this husband and she was like, yeah, he was good to me. He was a simpleton.
Yeah, basically, he was stupid, but he was a nice man.
He was a nice man. He took care of me. But the weird thing is that when she reflects on some of those scenes with him, he doesn't seem that big of a simpleton. Like
I didn't think so either. He was just content with his lot in life. And I don't think Anna was really, even though she didn't know it.
True. That's true. And so it's sort of a reflection of her own feelings about like what's going on in the town. And she's
I think her husband really represented the town to her in many ways.
That's a good point. It comes out in the book that she feels stuck, but you can kind of tell there's this struggle.
Yes. I don't think she even occurred to her to feel stuck because there were no other options in life until she took that horse out and experienced a taste of freedom. And then when she had the opportunity and the funds and the means to leave the town,
run away,
she left. Even after caring for those people and helping them get through a terrible, terrible time.
Yeah.
Okay. Did the characters feel realistic for the time period this was set in?
I am going to be 100% honest. I don't know. I don't know much about the 17th century, so I'm not sure.
Yes.
There's a couple of scenes where she's alone with Michael before Eleanor dies. And I was like, would this have been considered inappropriate for the 17th century? I don't know. So I don't actually know if these characters were appropriate or, feel realistic to the time period. So
yes, that was my answer as well. It was just difficult to know because I don't know about the social structure of this time period.
Same.
I don't know. And anything I did know, I think is taken more from wealthier points of view.
Right, exactly. Yes.
So, because so many stories about that time period are told from like the wealthiest point of view. Yes. So we don't know what's appropriate for a housemaid.
Right. Exactly. So what's appropriate for a housemaid in a tiny town? Like where everyone knows each other already. Right. Yes. So yeah, I really don't know. And I am not huge on the history of the Renaissance. So I haven't really, I can name a bunch of Renaissance painters.
All right. So what was the plague and how did it affect people? We've talked about what the plague was, but Theresa, how does it present?
So the plague, the way that it presents, the bubonic plague specifically, is that it usually starts with a fever. The author actually does a really good job of showing confusion in people about whether or not somebody has the plague. And because it doesn't immediately present as the bubonic plague.
Yes.
And so it starts with a fever and it feels like influenza. And then people will form these, what are they called, Kate?
They're swollen lymph nodes, but they call them buboes?
Bubos, okay, right.
Yeah.
And it could be your neck, it could be the groin, it could be armpits.
Yeah, so it's on where your lymph nodes are.
Right, and it's a severe infection, and in some cases, those can burst.
Yes.
So, and it's very, very painful, especially for the people that have it like in their groins or under their armpits. So, and I did make a note here that if you've heard of the Black Death is the bubonic plague. And so that's the 14th century. And then there were pockets of the bubonic plague after that, because the Black Plague lasts for 6 years and kills about a third of Europe's population.
That's
insane, right?
Yeah.
And then this book is one of those pockets of where it's shown back up. And it's before, antibiotics and stuff. So they don't know
Hmm.
how to fight it. They don't know what it is. And at this point in history, I don't think they even know that it is the rats because I don't think they knew that until the early 20th
No, and the
century.
fleas from the rats,
Right.
they don't know. They don't know anything. It's their confusion and their desperation. And that leads to some of the villagers' actions
It does. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they're trying to find any way they can to ward off the plague.
I know now that that rats were the main carrier of the fleas, but I think there were some cases where other animals are carrying the fleas and that's infecting. Now, I told Kate this before we started recording, but there are some scientists that believe that the plague that showed up in this particular town that this book is based off of think that there was a huge mutation because they've been able to study the strain and that this plague actually mutated to jump from person to person.
Which
And
is terrifying.
it wasn't just being carried by fleas, which is, yeah, absolutely terrifying. And this has led scientists to believe that them quarantining themselves actually helped this plague not spread to the rest of England and, maybe potentially over to Europe, because that would have, if it wasn't just from fleas, it could have just gone so much further.
It could have.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And a note about their quarantine is we didn't really go into detail about what that entailed for them, but
Yes.
the minister arranged with the town's benefactor to provide food and clothing and things they couldn't get from within their isolated town. And they had a way to drop it off in the spring, or they had a stone with little pockets which they filled with vinegar, which they believe sanitized things.
Yeah, that was to sanitize the money.
The money, that they could leave the money in there. So they went so far as to have this stone that marked the edge of town with these holes drilled into it, and no one was to pass that on either side.
Come in or to leave.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I was reading that according to the histories, at least, that is exactly what they did. They had like these little things with vinegar for the money that the merchants could take, and then the merchants would leave stuff, and then they would back off, and the town folks would then come in and grab that stuff, and they would never got close to each other.
Mhm.
So, which is crazy because I remember doing things like that during COVID,
Right. But we had the benefit of being able to communicate with the outside world, at least through
Exactly.
Zoom, through emails, through telephone calls. They couldn't even do that. They talk about how the pastor, Michael, he would dictate letters or visit with his friend from another village, and they'd yell up and down a hill.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's another thing, even just outside of us having email, text, phone calls, most of those villagers wouldn't know how to read or write. So they
That's
couldn't
true.
even leave letters for the merchants to take to,
To
pass
family
on.
members.
And even if they could, I'm not sure that they would because they weren't sanitizing. They didn't have that vinegar that they could put.
Right.
You could have put a letter in vinegar. That'd be crazy.
Right. And they didn't know how it spread, so
Right.
they wouldn't take the risk.
Right, exactly. Because, somebody would die of the bubonic plague in one household, and then they'd be like, that's a plague house. People didn't want to approach it. They didn't want to go into it. So as much as I didn't like the book, it was fascinating to read about.
It was. Yes.
All right. Did we have anything else to add to that, Kate?
I think so.
Okay. What was the overall lesson of the plague in the book? For those who don't know, in our very first episode, Get Well Soon, the author talks about how in every single plague, there is a lesson to be learned from that plague. And so we have just taken that and run with it with every single plague that we've talked about, both real and not real.
Yes. So, and we found a lesson for each of them.
Yeah, we have.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what was the lesson, Kate?
I think it was that community make or breaks the response to a plague.
Right.
It can create comfort, act heroically, prevent the spread of disease, but then it can also cause people to turn on each other. And if there's too much stress and conflict and death and chaos and people turning on each other. So I think the lesson is just how important community is to the response and to supporting each other throughout a plague.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good answer. I didn't really have a lesson because I've used that one, I think, in almost every single book that we've.
I think it's true for most of the
true.
books.
No,
it's been
it
very
is
true. And if you
true.
look at our own personal experience with a plague/pandemic,
yeah,
community really made a difference. If your community was social distancing and wearing masks and getting your vaccines, the rates of COVID would go down. And then you'd see in other parts of the country where they weren't doing that, where it would go up. So I think it's actually just a very important
It's
lesson.
so important. I think the two main lessons that we really have taken away from this whole season is that one,
Hmm.
and leadership is so important. And
Yes.
leadership was really important in this too, because we have Michael running around being a good leader to the
Yes.
people.
Yes.
So,
And initiating a lot of these, they would not have done these steps if he was not organizing them.
right, if they wouldn't have quarantined, they wouldn't have later on in the book. It's pretty late in the book. It might be well over the halfway mark. People are still dying at a really fast rate. So he makes the decision that people have to bury their own dead and they can't have church inside the church anymore. They need to be outside to have church, just to make
Yes.
sure that everyone is, without using the words, social distancing from each other.
That to me was remarkable that they
Yeah.
did that. And that is based again on real events.
On real events, yeah, because they had some
So,
field that they went into. I
yeah,
can't remember, started with a D, and that's a real place, and that's what they did, which is so incredible to think about, because so much of what people were thinking back then, as far as I'm aware, is that the plague was bad humors, or your faith in God has dipped. And so the fact that they're like, oh, it's passing from person to person is so weird to me. And
that they were
so,
able to see that. Yes,
right.
it was ahead of their time.
Yeah, it really does feel ahead of the time. The whole quarantining thing definitely feels ahead of the times.
Yeah.
So,
So,
but
also in our first novel, we talked about heroes that
oh,
emerged
yes,
during a
yes.
plague and a crisis. So, were there heroes during this plague?
I would definitely say that the Montpellions are heroes, and that Anna does become a hero in her own right, where
Yes.
even outside of dealing with people with the plague, she is trying to take care of people,
Hmm.
helping mothers give birth. She's trying to help children, you know. So I think those are our three main heroes of when it comes to the plague stuff.
I would agree. I
They did
definitely
the
agree.
best. So, but I do have one more. The benefactors that
Yes.
agree to help with this, where they're not coming into town, but they're regularly sending stuff.
Hmm.
And I think that according to what I was reading, the benefactors aren't coming themselves, obviously. So these merchants are willing to do this. And I think that they need to be acknowledged, because that town could not have survived if it hadn't been for the benefactor and the merchants.
Yes. For
So,
people who were willing to give them aid.
yeah, aid, and respect the quarantine that they had put in place.
Yes. Hmm.
So, because if they hadn't, they could have potentially spread it to other towns, and then it could have just really snowballed from there, and that would have been really bad.
Yes.
So,
And who knows, there might have been another period of Black Death.
yeah, exactly. So, I think they were like on the way outskirts, they were heroes themselves. So, all right, Kate, here's some fun questions. And the one
Fun,
that
I thought was a little like out there for this one, but yeah, let's do it.
all right, and this one I can guess both of our answers to this one. Do you think you would survive this?
No,
Yeah.
absolutely not. The plague would be like, she has ill humor in the language of the 1600s. And she's obviously weak and frail.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's no way I would have survived this. There's no way.
Yeah, no.
I mean, even with getting COVID vaccines, I still get really bad symptoms whenever the time that I've had COVID, it's like I got really, really
Yes.
sick. So without antibiotics or anything like
Without
that,
modern medicine, no.
no way. And I think that I would have been okay if I had survived. I think I would have been okay, but I think that you maybe would not be okay watching the villagers die around you.
No, I was like, as soon as it started happening, I'm pretty sure I'd be like, take me now. I don't have the fortitude for this. I don't have the strength. I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah, I do see myself as a more natural caregiver, to Chris's chagrin, because he hates when I mother him. But yeah, I really don't mind taking care of people, but I think it would be surviving, actually, not getting the plague.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure that I would be among the first wave to die.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
same. All right. What were some significant moments or quotes that stood out to you?
So, as you know, I'm bad with quotes. Although I had one, and then I didn't immediately write it down, and then I was like, that was such a good quote, and I don't remember what it was. But the significant moment to me was when Eleanor and Anna go to the Gowdies, and they are starting to gather those herbs, and they sort of have this heart to heart. Anna reveals that she's not become addicted, but she's relying on something to help her sleep. And Eleanor tells her about this tragic past that she has. And then they start to gather herbs and they start to learn about them. And I feel like at that point, that's when Anna herself has a change, where now she can fully trust Eleanor and they work together really, really well. And I feel like the town benefits from that scene. So I think that was probably the scene that stood out to me the most.
Yes,
So,
definitely. That was a very significant scene, I think.
yeah. How about you? I know you're
I
the
had
quotes
some
girl.
quotes. I love quotes, and there was quite a few in this one, so I limited myself to 3. But probably my favorite one is this one. I cannot say that I have faith anymore. Hope, perhaps. We have agreed that it'll do for now. And I think that is really beautiful. Her faith has obviously been tested because her faith in God, because of what she's gone through, but she's not lost her hope. And that is something to hold on to. And so I thought that was really beautiful. Another one is when she's rescued this little baby from a terrible situation. They were going to drown her, but she ended up rescuing her. So this little girl seemed to me at that moment answer enough to all of my questions. To have saved this small singular one, this alone seemed reason enough that I lived. I knew then that this was how I was meant to go on, away from death and towards life, from birth to birth, from seed to blossom, living my life amongst wonders. There you get the Year of Wonders.
Sneaked that title right in there.
Yep. And then the last one. For life is not nothing even to the grieving. Surely humankind has been fashioned so. Otherwise, how would we go on?
Right.
And that just speaks
That's
through
good.
the resiliency of humankind as a whole. I don't think of myself as a resilient person. I think I've proved that I'm not. But
humankind is.
Humankind itself is. Because otherwise, how do you get through tragedies like this if everyone would just like lie over and roll over and die and not get out of bed? I need my antidepressants. I need all of that to survive. I would not have done well in
this time period. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So.
All right, Kate, was there any music that gave you the same vibes as this book? Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So the only thing I could think of, and this came to me when because they did a lot of hymn singing in the book, psalms. She wrote down what psalms they would sing in church. So I thought of a song that I grew up around Lent in my very Lutheran upbringing, Stricken, Smitten, and Afflicted.
Okay.
It's a very depressing hymn. I hate it.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, that's fair that you thought of it.
Yes. So I thought it was very appropriate, probably, because they were smitten, stricken, and afflicted.
Yeah, they totally were. Oh my gosh. Okay, I have 2 songs. And the first one, you're going to laugh so hard. Is this song Plague, The Plague from The Prince of Egypt.
Oh my God, why didn't I think of that? That is perfect.
When they're singing, and I love that song. I think it's so,
it's such a good soundtrack.
Yeah, it's a good soundtrack. And I think that song's really, really cool. But the second one, and this one I might cut out, is Burn the Witch.
Oh my God.
By the Queens of the Stone Age. The reason that I thought of that one is one, that song pops off. Like it's so cool sounding. And the whole time there's just this like, is there a witch? And there's a superstition going on in the town. And so that song came to my mind.
It fits. It definitely fits.
If I keep this in, just know that song, there's no swearing in it or anything like that, but it's not exactly family friendly. So.
Noted. Mine is just incredibly depressing.
Yeah, that is pretty depressing, but also very Lutheran.
It's so Lutheran. It's so lit and Lutheran.
Yeah. That's fantastic. All right, Kate. Last question.
All right. What would you rate the book, Theresa, from 1 to 10?
I rated it 3.5.
Oh my God.
What?
You really did hate it.
Told you. I didn't rate it a 2. That was my original thought because I did appreciate her character development and I did appreciate the research that the author clearly did.
Yes.
What did you rate it?
I rated it a 6 because while I didn't love it, I thought it was well written for the most part, and there was a lot of character development. It's a good character study. It just wasn't for me.
Yeah. See, and I didn't even like the writing style or anything like that, and I was just really struggling through it. When you would ask me how far along I was, it was just like, first of all, I had a migraine. I was already not into the book, and then I had a migraine, and I would read like 10 minutes at a time.
I was worried about you that you wouldn't be able to get through it because it was so intense, and I know when I am sick, if I'm going to listen to a book or read, first of all, that's rare. Second of all, this would not have been it.
So my migraine, when her kids die, I was reading it and my head was really bad. And because it's so vivid, I was just sitting on the bed, just bawling my eyes out. I was just like, I emotionally cannot handle this scene right now,
Yes.
but I need to get through it.
Yes.
And that scene to me was the hardest scene in the entire book.
I would agree. I would agree.
Because she
Well, for me, the witch scene was pretty intense as well. It was also very hard.
see, and that one doesn't go on as long as her children dying. So her children getting sick, and then she knows that they're gonna die, and her heart is breaking, and she's so attached to them. So I was just like,
And the irony that her stepmother comes and chides her for getting so attached to little ones before they grow up. And then her stepmother was so attached to her little one that she clung to its dead corpse as it decomposed.
yeah, that was ridiculous. That was ridiculous. So yeah, I struggled with that scene, and it was late at night, and I had a migraine, and I was like, oh man, this is gonna be rough.
Yeah, that's why I kept checking in on you, because I was like, I would not be reading this if I had a migraine.
Last night I sped read. I was like, am I retaining anything? I don't know, because I read
to talk about the end. I was like, how did she do that? She was like, she had over 100 pages left.
Yeah, because I had like 125 pages left when I talked to you at 2 yesterday. But when I put my mind to it, I can read really fast. So
yeah.
And it was one of the things where I was like, I just need to get through it so I can be done with it. So
Yeah.
But
Yes.
I will say that, as usual, I don't regret reading the book.
That's good. That's good. That's what bumps it up into the 3 range.
That's right. All right. We should wrap up.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. Remember, in 2 weeks, we'll start our fairy tales and folklore retellings. And we hope that you enjoyed Plagues and Pandemics. We have had quite a few listeners, which is great.
Yeah, which is wonderful. We hope you stick around and follow us into the next season.
We pretty much have our next season planned out. However, if you do have any folklore or fairy tale retellings that you would like us to cover, comment.
Yes, let us know.
And as we said, we might do multiple seasons of this, not in a row, but we could add your things to the list for a future season. So
yes, definitely.
Yeah, but other than that, is there anything else, Kate?
I don't think so.
Follow us. Please like and subscribe.
Yes, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.